Aloha, everybody. This is Maria Christina Owl at Sacred Future. Welcome to another episode of Wise Women Dialogues on Full Disclosure and Ascension. I have a beautiful new sister here, Heidi Tahana. Welcome.
Thank you. Yay. Thanks for having me here.
It's very exciting. Heidi has a treasure trove of wisdom and information and offering that we will likely not get to all of it in one show. So we're going to do multiple episodes. But for now, I want to just tell you a little bit about her amazingness. Heidi, your background is in the fire department as a captain for 20 years or
Yes.
more. 20
Yeah,
years.
a little over 20, yep.
And so as well, paramedic.
Mm-hmm.
And you had two beautiful children.
Mm-hmm.
And then your life took a turn towards, from what I understood from your bio on your website, HeidiTahana.com, yeah?
Yes.
You were saying that you went through a major, inner initiation. Your soul was calling you. You had the answer. You ended up going through many gateways of transformation that led you to become a licensed therapist.
I did. Mm-hmm.
And you're also the author of 3 books. One of them, Fire and Water.
Yes. Awakening the Dragon Within. Yes.
Yes. And so one thing, I met Heidi, she was presenting at a retreat here on the Big Island with Joan Ocean. And she presented on one of her favorite topics, which is like advanced technologies and free energy and med beds and all of this plasma energy that is coming out now and offering people like a true liberation from the limitations where we've been medically and in engineering and in so many levels of our society. So we're going to talk about that for sure. And I wanted to launch us off here with the question to you, Heidi. Can you just tell us about your perspective of ascension and, how do you experience that, perceive that personally and on a global scale?
Good question. For me, thinking about ascension, I tend to think of it more as an expansion of consciousness. I think of it as we move into these other realms and other dimensions, it's really a way of expanding who we are, what we are. It's like becoming aware more of what is out there. And so sometimes when I think, I used to think, oh, when I'm ascending, does that mean, I'm off the earth? But it feels like we become more aware of everything around us. We become aware of Mother Nature and the elves and the fairies and how the trees talk and the dolphins and the animals and how they've been trying to communicate with us for forever, or even by communicating with them, it leads into communicating with the extraterrestrials and our different planets that where we have come from and have forgotten where we've come from. So I'm really excited about this time because I know a lot of people talk about ascending, and I really feel like we are coming into a whole new paradigm, a whole new energies, a whole new everything of new belief systems, releasing the old limitations and really understanding who and what we are. And just think about that. If we can, really listen to all that's out there. I mean, imagine having, somebody from the Pleiades or somebody from Arcturus or, and what do they know and how can they help us expand the technologies and really becoming, part of our galactic family. It's an exciting time right now because I feel like humanity only knows about 1%. We can only see so much. And so we have these like constrained views on how we view life. And it's like, there's so much more out there. Our beliefs have been so limited. And I think, gosh, if we could see with the eyes of a child, go back to what a 2-year-old or a 5-year-old and how they see the world, everything is so new and expanded, and they don't have any limiting beliefs on what they can do or can't do until, their parents or their teachers or schools or, religion or whatever tells us something different. And, ascending, to me, it's like, let's get back to those places, those really amazing places, and being so curious of what else is out there in the world. So
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm right there with you. Thank you for that. And I want to just say that Heidi and I, we meet at this common language, of interdimensionality, extra dimensionality, and traveling between the worlds. And I know many of you out there have your own shamanic experiences, and perhaps through hypnotherapy sessions, perhaps through plant medicine sessions, or just a sudden vision that we have, or a clairvoyant experience, or remote viewing, something, even seeing a UFO that out of the blue in the night sky. So many of us have had these paranormal experiences, and then it's like after we have these experiences, there's this process of inner validation, and then processing that, like, okay, how do I integrate this into my life? Does it fit into my life? How do I fit it into a mainstream, a framework of who I'm supposed to be and act and believe, what I'm supposed to believe in, right? So
right.
could you talk about you and I have both been kind of in the ufology community for a while, and we know Michael Salla and Dr. Michael
Mm.
Salla and everything, and so what would you say to people who it does sound far-fetched when we talk about our galactic relatives, and starting to really learn from them and their advanced technologies? And for us, it's like that's a
Mm.
very tangible, real concept. And for another person, that's going to sound really far-fetched. But there is this whole background. We know the secret space program, and there's this
Mm.
whole history that humanity has had with ETs. Um, can you talk about that just from your perspective, or what you know?
Yeah, sure. Well, I think it's something that we've actually been disconnected from, and I think if you go back, just in the, looking back in the petroglyphs, look back at, just look at our indigenous cultures, look at the things in Egypt or even in Greece, or a lot of these other um, old history, that you could see that the actual extraterrestrials have been very connected to us, and actually came, it feels almost in a way like they came and checked on us or assisted us or helped us with the technologies. And at a certain point, it feels like somewhere in there it got disconnected from us, and whether that was from the powers that be, or whatever, we went down this more dense path, that we've forgotten really who we are. I mean, you had a lot of the, religions that took over, the Inquisitions and the things like that, because it really feels like, I mean, even the old goddess cultures, they were very connected as well, and incorporated all that stuff into their shamanic practices and talking to nature and things like that, which, it's, you think about it, and it's such an egocentric way to view the world as a human, to think that we're the only ones out there, that this is all that there is on this planet. It's like, I mean, you start to just look at the stars, and you'll have memories. I remember as a kid, I used to stare at the Pleiades all the time. I would lay on the driveway, and look up at the stars and be like, what is that out there, and it wasn't until later when I really remembered my connection to them. And I think there's a lot more of us out there that you have these different experiences. And like you said, and it's, how do you put those into a perspective of, something that doesn't make sense in this world, and what we're told is, imaginary or not real. And you put those in those boxes, and you kind of leave them there because they don't make sense in the world. But when you really, start to get older, and you start to question these things, if you haven't stayed connected to those realms, that's what I feel brings you back, because then all of a sudden it's like life starts to make sense again, and it starts to become more real, other than, we're here and we go to school and we work and we eat and we sleep and we're entertained and then we die. I mean, it makes, you know, a really kind of pigeonholed kind of viewpoint of the world. And it feels like, okay, all of us are connected to those kinds of realms, but how, you know, even like you and I, we go swim with the dolphins or swim with the whales. Those are extraterrestrial beings in itself. You get out there and you can, you know that those are very advanced intelligences that are much more advanced intelligence than us. I mean, I remember, what is it they said, oh, it was an article, I think, from a veterinarian researcher in Texas A&M who said that the human genome is almost identical to the dolphin genome, and with just a few rearrangements. And it's like, you know, what have we been taught? We've been taught that we come from apes and that we've evolved and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, wait a second, there's so much more out there. You know, there used to be giants that roamed the earth, and the Smithsonian, you know, there's all these different articles that used to come out in the early 1900s about the elongated skulls and all kinds of stuff. So
That's right.
yeah, there's just so much more out there. It's like the Gosford glyphs over in Australia. You know, they show that there's a lineage of the 5 different times humanity has been seeded on this planet, and you kind of go, seeded? How did they get seeded on this planet? Well, you know, when you start to really expand that and look out there in the world, there's galaxies upon galaxies that just keep it expanding and expanding. So
That's right.
I know I'm kind of got off on a little rant there.
That's great. It was great. So many good topics. Your
Yeah.
topics. Yeah.
Stuff.
A couple of things that flashed through my mind as you were talking is, I know that in Egypt and in the Yucatan, the pyramids have closed down to the public and even started scraping off the stone carvings that depict the alien or the ET presences and their ships.
Wow.
And things like that. And so it's very hard to find them now, but you can still find old photographs before the really hardcore government, you know, lockdowns happened on these topics. You can still see the photographs where archaeologists found a chamber, and it's just covered in this whole story of, you know, in their ships. And I know in Calakmul in the Yucatan, there's a main pyramid there that there's a big metal door that is dead bolted shut, and you can't get in it, but there's stairs that go straight down into the pyramid. And that's where they found imagery in the Mayan fashion, you know, their glyphs, imagery of the sun and a ship coming out of the sun, and astronauts, they, you know, in ships. And so it's very interesting that the information of our connection to other planetary beings has been so controlled and so kept from the masses. And why is that? You know, a lot of people have been working with that topic for a while in the truther community.
Right.
Other thing that strikes me about what you said is that almost all indigenous cultures of the world who still carry their lineage, you know, unbroken lineage of their oral traditions, etc., will tell you where they're star-seeded from, and under no uncertain terms.
Totally.
Right?
Absolutely. I mean, look at us here in Hawaii, you know, they talk about the Pleiades, you know, there's always a connection there, and same with Arcturus. You know, you're absolutely right. I mean, Japan's got a huge connection to the Pleiades, you know, and I think of, as you were talking, I was like, oh, right, there's also the Dogons in Africa, and they've been, you know, talking about, they knew how Sirius orbited around Sirius A around Sirius B, and they knew how about way before our scientists ever figured any of this stuff out. And I mean, they knew about how our planets revolve around the sun. They knew how many planets were in our star system. They had they drew the different ETs that came and told them all this information. And I think it was like these researchers, I think they were English researchers, lived with them for like 10 or 15 years and found out all of this information, and it was all right on, and it's like you don't make that kind of stuff up. You're
Right.
absolutely right.
When I was in my like 19, 20 years old, for the first 20 years old, 21, I went out to South Dakota, and I was doing a lot of ceremony out there with the Lakota people.
Mm,
And the medicine man who I ended up working with for 6 years, I remember when I first met him, and we were doing sweat lodges on the
mhm,
land, on the farmland that they were tending, and all these people crammed into a huge sweat lodge, and the elders would start telling stories. And one thing that my teacher he told a story about how the police, and the intelligence agencies would come to him and ask him to help them find missing people. They're like,
mm,
they asked a psychic, they asked some, like, a couple different psychics, and he's like, they gave incorrect information. I just went into a sweat lodge and talked to the star people, and they told me the answer of where this body was that they were looking for, and it was true,
mm.
and they found it.
Wow.
And he also said, like, if all these people are leaving the planet to go to the moon and bringing back moon rocks, he's like, we have moon rocks, on the reservation. Like, we
Wow.
have them, and we didn't get into a spaceship like a shuttlecraft at all. We
Yeah.
went into ceremony and came back with a moon rock, and I'm like, okay, and of course,
Amazing.
yeah, these are, for them, they were connected to the Pleiades as well. And as
Hmm.
we know, like, the Pleiades are, to us, it looks like they're all very close together, and there's actually light years of space between
Oh my
each
gosh.
of the
Totally.
suns. I see them each as a solar system, and that there's also possibly a portal in the Pleiades,
Hmm.
an extra dimensional portal, that from other realms, people are coming through the Pleiadian portal.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, I've heard that people talk about how our sun is a portal, like what you had said before, and how Sirius is a portal. I mean, there's so many different things when you start, expanding your mind that way. It's like, I think of like even space travel. It's like we travel through wormholes and we travel through portals. And, that's what's so amazing about our ocean too, is our ocean is really like the cosmos, and there's portals all in and out, through there. I mean, it's just amazing. I mean, just I think of, as you were talking, I was thinking about the Hathors, who were very present in Egypt, and there's the Hathor temple out there. And I mean, these beings were like 15, 18 feet tall. And when I went there to visit, there's something that just resonated so deeply. And they're also very connected to the Pleiades there at that temple. But they have the Hathor faces on like each column. There's a Hathor face, and the Egyptologist person who was there, who was talking to us about it, was saying they systematically went through and started to take off each one of the faces as much as they could. And I mean, there was like, 50 or more of these faces all over. And what they were saying is some of the clairvoyant people that would go to Egypt, they could actually see that the Hathors were still there, and just their faces being there, they were sending love and light to the planet just through their faces and just the energy of it. And it was their eyes, and every one of their eyes were destroyed just about. I mean, it was amazing. But I mean, it was like our ancestors were so connected to the extraterrestrials. I mean, even there was an incident, I remember reading about, like in 1998, that a gentleman named, maybe you heard of this guy, Urander Oliveira. He was down in Brazil, and he had, I think it was either the Palladians or the Arcturians who he worked with. And they said, we're going to come and pick you up in front of, gather a whole bunch of people, and we're going to come in our spaceship, and we'll pick you up through our light beam. And he was, okay, great. And so anyway, he gathered somewhere around 100 people there in Brazil, and sure enough, they showed up with their spaceship, and he walked out and walked into the beam and went up into the spaceship and came back. I forget, like either a week or a few days later or something like that. Well, how come that was never in the news? How come that wasn't like plastered everywhere? It was just, everybody went back to no big deal, like. But I also know, like, some of these other governments are very open with their people. And like, I remember meeting somebody from Mexico, and she was like, we have spaceships all the time. Our government doesn't hide any of this stuff. And it's like,
Right.
what is it with our government that hides this stuff, or a lot of the other governments that hide that stuff?
Yeah, isn't that interesting? It seems like more and more is coming out, almost like this was the designated or chosen time for a disclosure,
Mm,
bunch of soft disclosure to lead into larger disclosure.
true,
Have you heard
true.
anything about that?
No, I feel the same way, and that's what I keep hearing is that we're coming up to, sometime this year that it's finally going to be announced. I mean, like we had talked a little bit about Space Force, and that the old administration had put that up and out there, and it's just getting people to really, it's like you think about it, it was like what NASA back in the 60s, and we were into the moon, and then it's like you don't hear that much about it anymore, and it really feels like it went really underground in that whole place. And it feels like it's time. Too many people know, too many people, have seen too many things. People, I mean, we just saw, it was on I think it was on the mainstream news. They saw a ship on Oahu, that went in and out of the water. I mean, you and I know we see ships out here all the time, or when we lived in California, you see them, especially when I lived down Southern California, down towards Malibu, they're in and out of the water. And,
Yeah.
there's a whole nother world. And it's exciting because when they show up, I just feel like they're waiting for us to expand our consciousness enough and to get out really of that limited thinking, because there's so much more than just watching movies and going to dinner and those kinds of things. It's like, what happens when we die? Death to me is just a mistaken thinking. We don't really die. We just continue in a different realm, and it's our consciousness that survives. Our bodies don't, but our consciousness continues to go. And then it's like, well, where do I want to go next? Do I want to go to Arcturus? Do I want to go to Alpha Centauri? Do I want to go to Lyra? It's like there's so many places, there's so many realms and dimensions out there. Not to mention too, I mean, things that we've learned from the dolphins is that we're multidimensional. We don't just live this one life. They know they're multidimensional, and it's like we're coming back into that as well. It's like, whether you call them past lives or future lives, it's like you can see all your other lives too. And so they're all living concurrently, because past and future is really, that's a mistaken thinking too. Those are all frequency sets based on what we call time. It's really just a frequency set, and you can go to those places based on that frequency because of the location. And I mean, that's how we could get really deep into talking about like teleporting and time travel, and how our governments has had that teleporting since the late 60s, early 70s. And I'm ready for that kind of stuff to come out too, because I'm
Yeah.
tired of flying on a plane for 10 hours. It's like, can you imagine walking through a portal and being, oh, I'm going to go have lunch in Paris, or those kinds of things, right?
It's so amazing. You've done pretty extensive research about like alternative energy like this, and the you know
Right.
um, plasma
Yes.
specifically.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff coming out about plasma physics these days. I mean, it's been around actually since the late 1800s, but it hasn't really been talked about because we do kind of the Newtonian physics, and this is how an electron and an atom works, and the protons and the neutrons. And but really it's like coming out a lot more because a gentleman by the name of Mehran Keshe has basically, he's this really intelligent man he's Iranian, and he used to actually work for the British government and a lot of secret stuff. And he saw that all of this stuff was being hidden from humanity. And so I believe it was like in the late 90s, early 2000s, he actually left and started putting all the information out on the internet for free, and started what was called the Keshe Foundation. You can actually find him at keshefoundation.org. And there's all the blueprints of how to make these, what he calls like maggrav units. You can make different types of healing technologies. And he explains it all. He actually has classes that you can go online, and he calls it spaceship technology, because it really is. Some of the things that they're finding out is, this is what you can utilize and make. People are making these maggrav units and actually coming up with these plasma fields. And plasma is really just a form, just how we become form. It's electromagnetic currents that come together. And it's just like, you know how we talk about thoughts and, you know, control your thoughts because thoughts create and thoughts bring you what you want. Well, plasma physics actually explains all of that
Wow.
by showing that that's what we are these electromagnetic beings, and the more we, you know, are thinking certain things or doing certain things, we actually will attract that to us. And the more we think them long enough, we actually become solid. So we're made of plasma. I mean, but that's what's so exciting is about plasma technologies is that's how you instantly manifest things. You know, that's the kind of technology that this guy Mehran Keshe is putting out there. And I mean, I was just finding out about from a friend of mine. She was talking about the Sapphire Project, sapphireproject.com, and they actually are working with this plasma energy right now to the point where they can actually transmute radiation. So you can have radiation spills, massive radiation spills, and you can change them just by rearranging the molecules through the plasma physics, and it's cleaned up in 5 to 10 minutes. I mean, this is the kind of exciting information that's coming onto the planet right now. I mean, it also leads to, you know, new technologies in our medical system,
Yeah.
and just you know, right, it's like all
Talk
new
about that.
technologies, like, right, like those you know, people have heard of like med beds and things like that, because we have such a you know, a health system that's really not a health system, it's a sick system, you know. And here it is, it's like we can get in these med beds and have these frequency changes, and it's all based on these plasma physics. And you know, you and I know are very connected to our galactic beings, and that's what they use. You know, they have the
Yeah.
ability to age regress and to heal something back into perfect form.
Yep.
So you know, that's a lot of stuff that's I'm excited about, that's coming out here in the feels like in the upcoming year. Even I'm hoping that would be
Yeah.
fantastic. You know,
It'd be amazing. It'd be amazing.
right?
I mean, definitely, I feel like we can truly, honestly expect in 2021 that a lot of oppressed patents will be liberated,
Mm.
and given to the people. Um, you know what's amazing is you just said like we've learned this stuff from our galactic friends. I remember doing a session for a client I worked with, one session with her, and on the session, it was a remote session on Zoom. On the session, I went into channeling, and uh, an Arcturian medical guild
Mm.
came through.
Mhm.
And I'm like, wow, I was thinking to myself, like, I've never channeled this consciousness before, this frequency before. And they
Mhm.
came through and they were very scientific, and they talked her through because I think she was a lawyer or something, but
Mhm.
she had a very scientific mind and very curious mind.
Uh-huh.
So they're like, we know you have a curious mind, so we're going to describe to you exactly what we're doing. We're putting you in a holographic chamber. And
Wow.
in this holographic chamber, it looks like a pod, but for them, it was vertical. It wasn't lying down horizontal. It was like a vertical pod. And they would put a hologram of her into the pod. They do the work
Mm.
through frequency and consciousness. So there'd be
Wow.
multiple technicians around the pod, and their consciousness was like laser beams, like surgical tools, um,
Mhm.
shifting her frequency in different areas of her body so that she became all congruent and aligned and resonating at a harmonic frequency in all of her organs and all of her cells hydrated. And
Yeah.
then they would, you know, basically inlay her light body in back in. Of course, the work they're doing the work on the hologram of the light body, but then so
Mhm.
that gets translated directly into her actual physical cells, you know,
Wow.
and integrated in like that. And they had different, so they called it a holographic chamber, but then they had these little coils that were blue, called accelerators. And if
Mm.
there was a say there was like an area of the body that had a necrosis, or it had like a stagnancy to it, that it needed a catalyst to get
Yeah.
it back, like a jump start, or you know,
Mhm.
like for one
Mhm. Yeah,
area
yeah.
that was like not responding to the energies of the rest of the cells that were like, hey, come on, you know. And they put these accelerator coils, tiny little accelerator, energetic, you know, um,
Mhm.
into the body at certain areas to support the quickening of regeneration in certain areas of the body.
Awesome.
And
Wow.
it was just like so fascinating. And it was 2 years, I think, later, 2 or 3 years later, that I heard about med beds. Probably 4 years later, that I saw like an image of a med bed and how it actually pulls up the hologram of the person
Wow.
above the bed, and you program in like in the hologram,
Hmm.
like you do the work, and then it
Wow.
translates, right? And I'm just like, oh my god, I've seen that.
That is
So
awesome. That is so amazing that you saw that.
yeah,
Yeah,
so
that's like what we're going into, and it's like it's all right here. We just I feel like you know how we put our energy towards something and we keep continuing to recreate it over and over and over again. And that's what I'm constantly being showed. I mean, even I was out swimming with the dolphins today. I kept feeling like, oh my gosh, we were swimming with the dolphins and then we found this jellyfish, and this jellyfish, I just kind of merged my energy with it. And that's what I kept feeling. I kept hearing your reality is totally malleable. You're just, I mean, and I was like, oh my gosh, like we could change our reality if we really wanted to, just like that. I mean, seriously, that quickly. And it's like, what is there, almost 8 billion of us on the planet right now? And it's like, can you imagine? I mean, you don't even need that many people to really change the reality. It's, it's what is that? It's like Abraham Hicks always says, one person in alignment is more powerful than a million who are not. And so think about that. It's like just getting into alignment and really feeling into your heart and connecting with source and just being in that oneness state. I mean, think of all the way we can shift it and we get out of this fear. I mean, there's so many things and so many unknowns that are going on in the world right now, right? And who's in charge and what's this and what's happening with that? And it's like just our thoughts. And if we could get together, even just a small group of us, really, and just create this whole new reality, like with what you're talking about, these med beds and these frequencies, and what I was talking about, like these plasma physics. I mean, that's all the same kind of stuff that's it's all here. It's just maybe that's what we need to do more, is really release humanity from our old way of thinking and our limiting beliefs, and this is how it is, and this is the way that I was taught. It's like it's time to break free, people, and really like step into who we really are and question things. I mean, I don't know about you, but as a kid, I questioned everything, and I was rebellious, and I didn't like the system, and that's who I came in as, and I, like a system buster. And I feel like there's a lot of us here that are really like, it's time,
yeah,
get
rock,
out of the system. Like,
rock and roll.
yeah, it's really like, gosh, there's so much out there when we really put our mind to that. I mean, even like I was thinking, our governments, like, how can we make something that's amazing for all of us? Why do we have so much government? Like, why don't we get rid of, probably 3/4, 9/10 of the government, and really start, have the people really pick who we want to pick, the wise people and the wise beings, and start to really govern ourselves too. Like,
Yeah,
why do we put other people in charge of these things? And a lot of these galactic groups, they have councils, and these councils, we could start those on a
exactly.
local level, right? And even with in our own homes and in our communities. And there's so much to be said about that. And I mean, look at just the word government. It's like, govern men. Is that really what we have been doing this whole time? And so having more of a round table instead of one person's in charge, and getting
Yeah,
back to some of
yeah.
those things.
And that a lot was carried over from the monarchies of Europe. A lot of
Mm,
ideology
yeah,
around like power over the people,
right.
and there was always this kind of like delusional like perception that
Yeah,
we have to make decisions for them because they are not smart enough,
right.
the uneducated people, but they kept them uneducated, the
Right.
uneducated women, and like that. And it's like um the new way is definitely circles, councils, collectives, for sure.
Mm,
And that's
mhm,
the feminine, that's like the great mother's return right there.
mhm.
right? That
Absolutely.
consciousness returning to the human consciousness field on Earth. And
Absolutely.
yeah, and I was linking. I was going to link that to something.
Well, it's just so perfect, like what you're saying, because you're absolutely right. It is what the Great Mother. That's the feminine coming in, and it's really like not. I don't know. I just sometimes I listen to my women friends, and they're like, we need to take it back, and we need this, and we need that, and I feel like I keep hearing like we need to be in balance, and we need the divine masculine, and we need the divine feminine, regardless of what sex we are. We need to be really in that balance. And I've met some amazing women and amazing men who really have and hold that balance together, and not having all of this attacking each other or segregation kind of thing. And it's really, as you talk about like the Great Mother, it made me think of like even our education systems, because you were talking about like the monarchy and keeping people down. And it's really like our education system doesn't teach us how to think. It teaches us what to think and what to believe. And just getting out, breaking free and thinking about that, how like more of the Waldorf type schools with Rudolf Steiner and those kinds of things, like getting back into what do you think, and what, bringing those kinds of aspects in, and really getting our kids to connect to nature. And what are the plants saying? What are the animals saying? Because we've also been fed this belief of we have to have domination over nature. And I think, oh my gosh, we are part of nature. Like, what are we doing? We're destroying everything in our world. And it's like, no, 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 we need to come back. And that's what I feel, Mother Nature's waiting for us to come back and really become more connected into all of that. But and it just reminds me of my some of the things that I've heard from the Pleiadians is that's one of the highest honors in the Pleiades is to be a teacher. You can't just be a teacher. Like, you have to be hundreds of years old before you can ever become a teacher, because think of what you're doing. You are raising your civilization. And so those children are so important on the way that they're taught. And look at us, we just stick our kids in daycare and schools, and let whoever, what is it, the Rockefellers have pretty much put the schools together. And it's we're missing out on so much. And so it's really, I feel like that's some of the what you're talking about, like the mother bringing her children back, and what are we teaching our kids? And so much of it was learned right at home, and how we were taught and what to believe and how to think. And that would make this whole world shift if we could. That would empower us. Instead of having power over, it would empower us.
It would just be so huge, and I feel like perhaps the first step is to create the local councils, is to create
Mhm.
the local circles and start to dismantle the dysfunctional bureaucratic hierarchical system, of representation that doesn't represent people at all.
Right.
It's just a power grab. But it's
Totally.
like, let's start creating these neighborhood circles, and then the neighborhood circles create a county circle, and the county circles create a regional circle, and the regional circles create a state circle, and then
Beautiful. I
those
got chills.
ambassadors, like, show
Hmm.
up at the 50 state. It's like there's a representative for the
Yes.
state council, and that makes sense to me.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. I love how you put that. That's so perfect. And then really, what is important to us, just think about, like I mentioned Rudolf Steiner earlier, and one of his things that he said, I mean, he was quite a visionary and he was a seer. And, one of the things that he, basically put out there is once humanity stops working for money,
Right.
we can evolve consciousness. And you think about it, it's like so many of us, this system has basically put so many of us in a place where you have to work all the time. Some people are working 2, 3 jobs doing these kinds of things. And it's like, what are we doing? It doesn't allow for that expansion of consciousness, that ascension, that kind of, questioning things. And you're just so busy, 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 busy that you don't have time to explore some of the deeper mysteries of the earth and what are we doing here. And it's like Rudolf Steiner was so amazing, because that's what I think, that's why it's like plasma physics is amazing, because what if we could instantly manifest anything we want? And that's where we're going. I mean, that's what like the Sapphire Project is showing us. And that's what our connecting back to our galactic friends, that's what they're showing us. It's like, oh my gosh. I mean, even like well, another thing that Rudolf Steiner had said was that once we stop viewing the heart as a pump, that then we will really start to evolve our consciousness, because it's been since the 1600s that we've thought of the heart as a pump. And really, once you start learning more about the pump, I mean, there's a gentleman named Frank Chester who's a geometrician, an artist, a sculptor, and he basically figured out the sacred geometry of our hearts is this Chestahedron type. Actually, I have a little, I always keep
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
There's a little Chestahedron. This is actually what our heart, our sacred geometry is in our hearts. And it's also the same shape that's in the earth, this Chestahedron. But what he found is this shape right here also shows us intergalactic travel, space travel, how wormholes work. I mean, there's so much more in there. He's shown that it's not a pump, it's a suction pressure unit, and you can go down so many rabbit holes with him, and it's fascinating if you want to really find out more. But that's going to change the whole medical perspective and change our whole medical paradigm, the way we see it. And I mean, he talks about how there's two vortexes in the heart, and the way that it crosses, it actually forms a cross in the heart. And there's so much sacredness around the cross that's been passed on for eons. And it's really, if you go into that still point, right into the center of the cross, right, that's absolute stillness. That's where you find and you connect to that divine within. Just putting your hand on your heart, and it's been shown scientifically that connects us. It gets us out of our head. It turns on all our DNA. It gets that junk DNA that we supposedly have. But when you're in your heart space, all that's lit up. I mean, that's how I feel like, we called them the gods and goddesses in Greek mythology and stuff. I feel like, no, they figured out our actual way that we're supposed to be. Like, this human bodysuit, I think, has so much potential, and we're taught that it doesn't, and it's time to get back online, because, like we were talking about the indigenous cultures, they still know how to teleport their human body different places, right? This is not uncommon. This is the way we used to live, and I feel like that's what some of these new technologies are showing us, that we can see that, but then it's also going to remind us that we have that in our own human bodies.
Yeah.
We're going to expand so much, right?
Oh my gosh. I'm so glad that you went off on the heart. I know that's one of the things that when we first met, that we connected on, talking about the heart field and the portal in the heart.
Yes.
So that's fascinating, like the cross in the heart and the still point at the center of that cross. The way that you describe it, I can corroborate with that. When I was doing my psychotherapy training, at graduate school, I went to CIIS, California Institute of Integral Studies in San Francisco. Of course, one of the founders of that school was Sri Aurobindo, which is, he also founded Auroville in southern India, a community there that is, works with what was channeled through him, and the mother being the feminine counterpart to his wisdom, a woman who he called the mother, and she was known as the mother. And so in my transpersonal psychology class, my teacher, Brant Courtright, he's authored some books. He's a very amazing, very transpersonal man. One of our classes was to go into meditation in the form that Sri Aurobindo guided. And so we, off campus, we went to this beautiful meditation hall right across from San Francisco, or Golden Gate Park. And we were all meditating for half-hour blocks of time. And he said this to us. He said, when you go into your meditation, you're going to locate yourself at the back of your heart. So your heart organ, go to the back of your heart organ, straight back through the center of the heart. And at that point, you do one of two things to basically go into your vast consciousness and connect with with the vast divine. You either long to commune with God, or you give thanks to God,
Mm.
right? So
Wow.
one of those two things. And so we went into a number, like 3 sessions of these meditations at the back of the heart. And for sure, it's a portal, right? It's like, why? What did he know, right? Why
Yeah.
the back of the heart? Why that point at the back of the heart? He located and identified that as a portal, as the portal, as the point. Many, like 10 years later, I was in a channeling session, and the elevated positive polarity consciousness of Saint Germain came in to talk to Dwayne and I. What did he
Mm.
do? He had us go to the back of the heart, and
Wow.
he called it the 0 point.
Oh.
He called it the 0 point. And he
Wow.
said, go to the back of the heart chakra, he said. And at the
Hmm.
back of the heart chakra, notice that there's a bright light. Go through it like a portal.
Hmm.
Once you go out of the bioelectric chakra within the human form, you're leaving out of a portal, out of the the matrix of the human form, like the physical form, and you're going into your multidimensionality. You leave
Hmm.
that through that portal. You suddenly go into what he called the 0 point, where he said you're outside of all reality spheres, all timelines, and you're in the it's like you're literally in that womb of all potential,
Mm.
where you can like, I don't know, sense all reality spheres and all timelines. And from there you can actually learn how to hop into, either choose a new timeline for your life, or you can travel like through timelines. You can travel into different reality spheres at any star system, and you can shift. You can bring positive polarity. You can shift. You can assist. You can serve. Right? You can make tweaks for the
Hmm.
highest good of all. Right? Um, and then you come back through the portal at the back of your heart,
Hmm.
and it's done. Right? It happened. That shift is
Wow.
permanent, so to speak.
Wow. Oh, that was beautiful. That's wow.
Interesting, right?
That's so fascinating because that's some of the things that I feel like when I stumbled onto the heart information. I mean, everything you just said, that's what I've seen in my own meditations, in my own experiences, and just some of the things that I've been diving into, just about everything I can of anybody that's put anything out there of the sacred geometry of the heart, of about the cross, because it really is. I remember reading something about how the cross, when you have a circle around it, that actually represents immortality. And to enter that, because like we said before, death is a mistake in thinking, right? It's like death and taxes are not really, I mean, that's a limiting belief that needs to be blown up in itself, right? Those are not true. And it's like that immortality, it's right what you just talked about, going through there. And I know sometimes when I'll just, if I tune in my head, or I'm thinking about something and I'm like, okay, I gotta, what needs to happen here? It's like, okay, put my hand on my heart, I get into my heart, and the first thing that I start to feel is like that stargate open, like that portal open, and it's almost like I collapse in through, like almost like it folds in on itself, like a wormhole in a sense. And you go into that place where you connect with all of it and you commune with all of it, and you really are, you're timeless, you're out of time, there's no, it's incredible. And I always say it's like a stargate when you enter into your heart. So I love that you just shared that. That's exactly, I mean, and the most amazing thing too is Frank Chester, through all his work, he's showing that too. It's like science is finally proving what we've talked about esoterically, spiritually, and so it's like two sides of the same coin finally. And it's like so many people, oh, that's woo-woo stuff, or oh, that's not real, show me. It's like, okay, that's what we're finally showing you, and plasma physics is showing you, and it's all of these different things. It's not woo woo, it's actually, there's a whole scientific principle behind that. So yeah, I mean, can you imagine if we all, I mean, because we're taught that, the brain knows everything, but it's really our hearts that know everything. And if we had a civilization where we all came from our hearts, this whole place would change so quickly. and to, like, that's what some of the things the Heart Math Institute is also putting out there too, is, they've shown that the soul doesn't even, or the heart doesn't come online until 21 days into it. It's like, one, there's no heart for the first 14 days, but then when the heart does show up, it is activated at 21 days, and that's when they actually can show the toroidal field that is happening, that's around us. Our auras come in, and that's like where they say that our soul, comes in and out of, is through that point, like you just mentioned before. It's all being shown scientifically, and it's absolutely fascinating. And I know that there's even more there, that we have more to discover, is what it feels like.
Yeah, for sure. You know what I love is I love the concept, like that a lot of like Star Trek and Star Wars and the technologies in Stargate series, a lot of those technologies, these were actually like disclosures,
Totally.
that they wrote into the screenplays, and they based the whole the technologies of these future times. And Stargate in particular was such a disclosure series,
Yes.
right? Such a disclosure
Totally.
series. And it's like all of that's real. All of that's real. The replicators,
Totally. Mm-hmm.
they call them biobeds in
Oh,
Star
right.
Trek.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And it's just amazing. Like they're working with plasma,
Mm-hmm.
the plasma core, like
Right.
like everything in they're working directly with the secret space program for a lot of that material and disclosure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, and think about it. Think about how far back that goes. I mean, back in the 60s and 70s, and I'm like, oh my gosh, they've been disclosing this stuff for what, well over 50 years. It's like, what kind of technologies do they have out there? What have they explored? What kinds of things, has the people in power, what do they know? And it's like, okay, it's time for, the masses to have access to that technology and be open enough. And I feel like, I mean, you talk about, the mother energies, and there's so much light flooding in on this planet. The Schumann resonance is off the charts. It's like I sometimes I'll be meditating, and I'll just see like institutions start to collapse in on themselves, and I feel like there's just so much, the grid has changed, the ley lines have changed, the energies have shifted, that we're going to watch things just disappear in a way, because they can't exist. They're not built on light. They're not built on power with each other. They're not built on the good for all. They're all about serving themselves and power over and those kinds of things. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if a lot of us don't start seeing certain corporations start collapsing, or governments collapsing. I mean, we already are seeing that.
Yes.
But there's so much of that that's happening, and it's exciting, because I don't know about you, but I love Star Wars and I love Star Trek as a kid, because that just so much resonated with me, and I'm like, oh yay, we're finally coming back into that time.
I know.
Probably why we incarnated here.
I know, it's so cool. It's so cool. And the Maya talk about this in their
Mm,
prophecy. It's like the
totally.
Maya Codex that went to Dresden, Germany, ended up in Dresden, Germany eventually. I actually had the incredible honor to sit with a Mayan Tata as he translated for us the Dresden Codex.
Oh
Um,
wow.
and he read it out loud in in translated from the Mayan into Spanish, and then we had his translator translated from Spanish into English for us. And part of that was saying that the 2012 shift, because this was in 2011 that I helped to put on an event for him to speak. And what he shared was that the 2012, going from one Baktun to the next Baktun, was a shift of that would entail the collapse of all of the structures that had been built without without balance.
Mm-hmm.
So out of we have universal or cosmic law, and then we have natural law,
Mm-hmm.
and then we have man-made law. And man-made law falls so short and
Mm-hmm.
can't stand in the light without complete alignment and harmonic with natural and universal law.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And the original, that's what they say, like the original Constitution of the United States, before it was changed into corporate, the corporation of the United States,
Right.
our original Constitution was written in the verbiage of universal law and in the complete understanding of universal and natural law. And so when we think about man-made law, anything that was created in a dysfunctional and out of balance man-made law, which is self-serving and reverse grid and everything,
Right.
those structures are going to collapse. And he listed, the military, the negative military industrial complex, the educational, the agricultural, the banking, financial, like he was just like boom, 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 and you'll see a whole new grid, or web consciousness arise in natural and universal law,
Oh, that's
resonating in total harmony.
Wow.
You're seeing it. These are the times. I never thought I'd see the day. It's just crazy.
I know it's so exciting to be here, even though there's so much falling down around us and so much chaos. But you're exactly right. It's like, and that's why I think, we're definitely not alone. Like you talk about the United States Constitution back when the old republic, it's like, that there was ETs there helping them, write that, whether they knew it or not, but they may have been whispering to them or however that is. It's like, yeah, they've been here helping us through so many things, and they keep coming back. Okay, are you ready now? Do you want your help now? It's like, there's so many books written about the Venusians that have come trying to, help the governments, like Valiant Thor, and what are some of those books by Dr. Frank Strange's, how they came in the 50s and tried to talk to President Eisenhower and went to the Pentagon, and and it was like we were too much in our war stuff that we didn't want to allow these in, and it's like, yeah, there's been negative ET influences as well that, that has been going on the planet too. And it's like, there's so many amazing things right now. There's just so much light flooding the planet. And it's, you can even look at where we're going into the solar system. We're in the middle of going into the photon belt, in the Pleiades, which, that's 2000 years of intense light, more and more and more light on the planet. It's like we are finishing cycle after cycle, 12,000 year cycle, a 26,000 year cycle, a 205 million year cycle. It's like all of these things, and it's all due to different positions that we are in the galactic realm. And we're at the cusp of it and have been. And I sometimes think, well, the 60s, why didn't we go at it back then? And it's like we've had these uprisings, and then these, it's like we've been crushed again. And right now it feels like this huge uprising again. And all I saw, in the last few days, I don't know about you, but when I was meditating, all I felt was like this push along my back, and it almost felt like there's no going back. We can't go back. It's only going forward. And it was such a huge, like, oh, whoa, we're going forward. We are finally moving forward. I'm like, oh my God, it's happening.
It's happening. Yeah. Yeah. It's so happening. I'm so excited. So how are you guiding your kids? Your kids are now teenagers, yeah?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good question, because teenagers, I have a 17 and a 14-year-old, and so they pretty much govern themselves, and I feel like they come to me whenever they need help on certain things. But for the most part, I remember in the fire department, I met there's so many wise men that I worked with in the fire department that just, oh my gosh, they were incredible. But one man that I met, he had, I think 4 kids, and he, 4 boys. And I said, give me some advice, raising kids. And he said, oh, I have the best advice for you. And he said, my mom actually told me this advice. And he said, do for, do with, stand by, and let go. And he said, you do 4 when they're little. And then when they're a little bit older, you do everything with them, and the up until 10 or 11, 12, and then it's like, then when they hit their teenage years, you stand by because you've taught them everything they need to know. You've modeled it for them. You've helped them along through all of these different times. And then when they, turn 18 or they're in college or, then you let go, because you've raised them that way. And I thought, wow, those are really great, just such wise words and so simple. And so that's what I've really tried to do is, I feel like I should say, they taught me a lot, but I also helped guide them in this world. In fact, they understand the different things that are going on right now, but, I think most kids, most of them come in with their memories intact of where they came
Right.
from. They're still talking to the other beings from other planets. They're, imaginary friends, as us adults call it, that aren't connected. And for me, that was fascinating because that's when things really started to come back online for me, is when I had my kids and they started talking about their light beings and the Palladians and this person and that person and seeing, all kinds of different beings. And I was like,
Yeah.
I shut this off. I shut this off a long time ago, and then to open that back up and be so open. And it's like, we all have that within us. We all have that ability to connect to, our other selves, our spirit guides and other beings that are all around us. And it's like, wow, that, and that's what I feel like Mother Nature really does. When you start connecting back with her, you start realizing, the telepathic part of it and really connecting in more psychically and realizing, oh, this isn't, just a bunch of, only a few people have this. We all have this ingrained. And so, yeah, going back to
For it.
kids are just incredible. And I feel like that's what I had the thought the other day is, my daughter said something. She said, Mom, I'm trying to put this into words, but I don't think that there's the words here in the English language. And I'm trying to, put, and she described this whole thing to me. And the epiphany that I had was, oh my gosh, we have a whole group of beings here on the planet that have all of this new knowledge that we don't even have words for yet, because it's all the new technologies, it's all the new energies that are here. It's the galactic ways of thinking, the way we used to be connected here on the planet, and they're all ready to go. And I think, oh my gosh, what are the 20 somethings probably doing? They're probably like ready to go, and so that's what I feel like. We're going to see a shift in our colleges and our universities because, they've been infiltrated by the dark and not taught good ways of thinking. And I feel like there's going to be some new things out there as well. I mean,
Yeah.
did you ever read Mary Rodwell's book? She interviewed a lot of kids and all of their memories from their spaceships and planets and new technologies and all of these different things that they couldn't put into words.
Mary Rodwell.
Yeah, Rodwell. She's in Australia, and she actually she's really helpful for any kids or parents that don't know what to do if they have like ET connections. She's really great at interviewing a lot of them and helping them in this world, like, because she's very connected to that as well. So
That is
yeah,
so cool.
yeah, it's amazing. We are in amazing times. I mean, it's exciting. So
Yeah, it really, really is. And do you have any like final encouraging words, for our community right now that, just like hang in there?
yeah, what was coming to me this morning is focus only on what you want to see happen.
Yeah.
Focus on what you want to give power to, because that is what grows. That is what becomes. That's where, we talk about plasma physics. That's what, our thoughts create this reality system. And so really break free of our limitations, break free of limiting beliefs, question things. Why did I believe that? How did I get to that belief? Was that even true? And really focus only on what you want. And when you find yourself in a fear place, really just step back, take a deep breath, put your hand on your heart, close your eyes, ask for help, and just breathe into that. And we have so much help out there, and we're in this free will universe, and focus really only on what you want. And I think back to the words of, I think it was Mother Teresa, who said, I will not go to an anti-war demonstration, but I will go to a peace demonstration. And it's because she knew she's going to focus all of her energy on peace. And that is what is going to become stronger and stronger and stronger, versus if you focus on the war, that even though it's anti-war, you're focusing on all of that. I mean,
Mhm.
they've shown that, when we did the anti-drug stuff in the Reagan years, that actually grew exponentially because we were putting it all on what we didn't want, and so we need to focus and really shift that. And I think there's a lot of masters out there that teach that really, see yourself as whole, see yourself as healthy, see yourself as exactly the way you want, see the world as the way you want, because that's what we're creating. So
Absolutely, 100%.
yeah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, Heidi, to be continued.
Yes.
I feel
Yes.
we seeded a lot of great conversations that we can take each one even more deep. So let's schedule some more talks for sure, please.
Yes, I'd love to. Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. And it was great connecting with you. And yeah, we can just fly, fly, fly. So it's fun to go
Yeah,
even deeper.
yeah, yeah. Maybe the next one we could just do on specifically on Arcturus, because there's
Okay.
a lot of information around Arcturus. A lot of allies from Arcturus are connected
Yes.
to Earth. They're a major player, so to speak,
Yeah.
in like the supporting Gaia right now.
Oh, big time.
So I think that would be wonderful to bring all of that into a focused dialogue. So let's do that.
Yeah, that would be fantastic. I love the Arcturians. So yes,
Yay.
absolutely. Yay.
Okay, thank you so much, Heidi.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks, Maria.
And until next time, you guys, I'm going to put all the links of the information to Mehran Keshe and to the Sapphire Project and Mary Rodwell. I'll just put all of the, little resources, a resource list in the notes, comment, whatever it's called, description section of this video, as well as links to reach out to Heidi. She does do private sessions with
Yes, I
people,
do. Yep.
and she's a phenomenal, very adept guide, mentor, and intuitive. So I highly recommend finding out more about her work, checking out her books. So thank you everyone so much. And Wise Women Dialogue signing off.
Yay.
Yay.